Hey everyone, let's just keep on this nice energy on today's event and talking about unstoppable Latinas and resilient women. We have invited to this panel discussion about relationships that build resilience and building community to Rocio Medina van Nierop, Susana Cardona, and Karen McColl. They will share their expertise and insight in entrepreneurship, technology, and finance, and how they leverage their relationships and embrace change to build those with the community. Rocio is the co-founder and executive director of Latinas in Tech, a nonprofit organization that empowers and connects Latinas working in the technology industry. The organization comprises 16,000 Latinas working for more than 100 tech companies, spanning 16 cities in addition to Silicon Valley, where it began. Rocio is a strong proponent for the tech inclusion and participates in multiple boards and advocate for the participation of the underrepresented minorities. So as she launched the Silicon Valley Day, a conference that takes the best minds of Silicon Valley to the Latin American countries and communities. Susana Cardona is a traditional Latino upbringing by South American immigrant parents and her Latina experiences growing up between Southern California and New York. It's the embodiment of the cultural complexity existing in today's Latin identity paradox. Susana's rich upbringing taught her the core values that she lived by: respect, honesty, and integrity. Her deep cultural connection positioned her to start the Mamish community, which is the online forum for BIPOC mothers, and to launch a boutique brand marketing consultancy called Collectiva, which highlights and empowers the needs of female-owned and operated businesses. Prior to this, Susana spent 2 decades in the hospitality and brand marketing industry. And last but not least, we have Karen McColl. She's the Senior Vice President of Wealth Management, Commonwealth Financial Network. She has over 25 years experience in the financial services and Commonwealth Financial as Senior Vice President, Wealth Management, where she oversees the advanced planning, annuity research, insurance, investment consulting, and retirement consultative services team. Karen ensures that these teams consistently provide affiliate advisors with the indispensable support and resources they need to help their clients reach their goals. Karen is a chartered financial analyst and currently hosts her FINRA Series 7, 24, 26, and 63 securities registrations. She currently serves as a member of ALPFA Boston Corporate Advisory Board. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to share this time with you and have this conversation. So let's start talking about resilience. And I would like to ask the three of you, what is resilience for you and why it is important? So who would like to start?
I'm happy to start.
Sure.
So resilience, it's obviously trying hard and not giving up and giving everything you got, to wherever your passion lays. Now, my personal approach and also how I work with my team on it is, you gotta break things and bend things and experiment things so that we can accomplish true innovation and never to be defeated by failure. So removing the fear of failure allows you to really try again and again and again and iterate until you succeed. So to me, being scrappy and trying hard, that is resilience to me.
How about Susana?
Good evening, everyone. Resilience is one of those really complicated words for me because I feel like we get too much credit it's really a defense mechanism that many of us have had to adopt as first generation, as immigrants, as bilingual people, as people with accent, as people of color, as women, all of the things. And so I think that it's been a tool, a tactic that we've had to adopt for our survival, for our progress. But if we look at what resiliency being passed down to us has given us, it's given us creativity. And I think that we don't get credit enough culturally for being, you know, an incredibly creative and innovative community. And I think that it allows us to be really unstoppable, to not take no for an answer, to not say, you know, all of the lists, all of the reasons why we shouldn't progress, why we shouldn't be big and loud and expand. It's almost giving ourselves permission to take up all of the space. And so that's really how I like to think about resiliency.
And for you, Karen?
So to me, resilience is really the ability to recover quickly when there are major changes or setbacks, or you have to deal with something that's unexpected. And to me, this ability is super important because, let's face it, life is full of the unexpected. I mean, even for those of us who love to plan everything and try to control every last detail of our lives, the truth is we really don't know what's coming. We don't know what's around the corner. And so there's just an awful lot out there that's out of our control, whether it's in our personal lives, definitely in our professional lives. And so I think it's this idea of, yes, I'm planning my life, I'm taking control in the areas where I can, but I have to be powerful and strong enough to recover and deal with the things I didn't expect, and to get back up with style and grace and authentic curiosity and enthusiasm for the unknown.
That's great. Thank you so much for all of that insight, ladies. So, Rocio, people talk about, like, you know, being flexible and open to taking risk and pursuing new opportunities. How would you say you have grown into the role that you are by being flexible, taking risk, and seizing opportunities? That's for Rocio.
Can you guys hear me well? Because I think I'm freezing. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes, I'm going through an internet glitch. Okay, so how being flexible was valuable in my growth, and how being flexible is important to people. And I do really think that I touch on being scrappy a little bit, like being resourceful. Many times, and at least in my experience as a Latina managing Latin America, that was one of the positions I had at some point. It was hard to get resources. You know, you're competing with main English versions of software, let's say, and they get all the resources, while international and Latin America gets very, very few. That was my experience. So I had to be resourceful and flexible. Number one, flexible at, I'm going to get a lot of no. So I need to learn how to do it myself, and being resourceful of, you know, getting those tools that I needed or information that I needed by myself. Another thing that I learned, and it goes with flexibility, is many times as you're growing in your career, you invest a lot of calories and energy into a given project. And sometimes the company decides to pivot. And when you're younger, it's very hard to let go something where you invested a lot. So you have to let go when it doesn't make sense anymore and not being invested. So being flexible in those two areas were extremely crucial to me, and becoming a more rounded business person. That would be my answer there.
That's great. Like, you know, especially, yeah, you're right. Now we spent a lot of time sometimes in something that, in energy, and something that is not even right to do it anymore. So, and then become challenges, right? So, Susana, can you share some examples with us of like, those type of challenges you have faced and how you have overcome those?
Sure. I think that I share a lot of the same challenges that most of the women, if not all on this call, have shared, right? I was born here in the United States. So that is a privilege and a challenge because you're Latina here and then they send you back home for the summer and then you're American there. So that was always interesting, dynamic, and kind of messes with your head, right? But I come from a very, very working class background. And what does that mean? I wasn't afraid to work. I saw my parents work and be incredibly thrifty and scrappy, like Rocio said. And so I had to figure out how to pay for college, how to pay for an apartment. I had an apartment, my first apartment at 17 years old. How could I work a full-time job and pay for school? And I managed to graduate with no debt. Because I was incredibly resourceful and I watched my parents juggle and manage time and be disciplined and be consistent. And so something that would be seen as a challenge traditionally actually gave me an incredible toolkit that many of us already have innately in order to get through and reach my goal. Another thing was, and I like to joke about this so often, but being the first translator in my family, I remember being 7 years old and having to translate things like a phone bill and doctor's appointments and, going to literally anything that you had to ever explain to people that do not speak English and do not come from this culture, having to negotiate things from 7, 8, 9 years old. So when I entered into the working world and then to the professional world and the corporate world, I didn't have the fear that I think a lot of people did have because I had been negotiating from the time that I was little. I had been translating both languages and cultures from the time that, I'm also the oldest. So for those of you that are oldest daughters on here, that so much of we're like little adults. So I take those things that would seem like hurdles, but they gave me the most incredible lessons in my life.
Thank you for that, sharing that. You're right. We are dealing constantly with cultures and being the first translators in between our families and being the first ones on graduating from college and facing a lot of challenges and changes. So Karen, any tips to our audience can you share examples of how you were flexible and adapted to those type of changes?
Sure. So for starters, I think I can relate with so much of what we're talking about. And when I think of my own ability to be flexible and adapt to change, right, it's coming to the US as a child, still going back home to Colombia in the summers. And so I'm in the US and I'm not quite fitting in because I eat different things and I like different music and my family has completely different customs. And then you go back to Colombia and it's like, ay, que gringa. Right. So it's like you're just trying to find your place all the time. And I think what that did for me growing up was just really trying to be aware of what was going on around me, to read the room, to read people's reactions and emotions. And I think that that's something that I carry all the time, right? Like not to kind of put my own agenda out there, but to try to understand where other people are coming from. There's also, I think, some very important lessons that I went through in my career. So I was once in a role that I loved. I worked my tail off every day. I was so dedicated, working long, long hours. And I was of the mindset, again, coming from our culture, which is work hard, keep your head down, people will notice you, you'll make it, you'll get ahead. And the organization that I was with was going through major, major cutbacks. And I got caught up in that and I lost my job. And I remember feeling like it was the end of the world. Like I had lost my identity. I had let down everyone who ever knew me in my entire life. And none of that was true, right? It was like getting over all those things that I was doing to myself, and to just kind of unpack the emotion, to let go of the doubts I was having about myself, because I was really having a tough time thinking, maybe I'm not that good. Maybe I don't know anything. Maybe I don't even deserve these jobs that I've had before. And so I think having a good supportive network that helps you deal with all of that and then gets you out of your own way. And I think that like that was such a pivotal time for me, because it turns out the next job I went to, I was way happier. In fact, I realized that I was really, really miserable in the other place. And I would have never known that if not for the adversity and the what felt like this really awful thing became so much better, because it put me on a way better path with better people, better opportunities, and a better future.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, you know, going into like, try like, you know, getting like that, keeping your head down, and like, you know, like being like the culture of like being the quiet ones in the room. So Rocio, how do you build relationships, especially when you are an introvert? Not that we here are ones, but how would you build that? Is Rocio in?
No, you're mute.
I'm sorry. And I was just saying that it's a very good question for an extrovert. But as an extrovert, I did learn how to understand introverts a lot more. And it is very important for us extroverts to understand them so that we can understand some of their actions. So I saw once an infographic of how to interact with introverts, and there was like, I always felt like, oh, that person is so isolated, I need to bring them back to the party or to the group of people. And actually introverts find energy, and then they refuel by themselves, and they feel drained with people. So we need to understand that they're okay like that. We don't need to change them. And we both introverts and extroverts need to learn how to internalize or not internalize challenges. Like, for example, if you're the Latina in the room and you hear something that is, let's say, a microaggression, you have an option of internalizing that and affect you in your work and in your personality, or not internalizing it and allowing yourself to shine, regardless if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Doing your best at shining, having allies, really getting out of your comfort zone and finding yourself a mentor, an ally, a friend, so that you can grow in your career, get your voice. That is extremely important. So I do think that it is important to get a little bit out of your comfort zone, and they will help you, you know, get out of your shell a little bit when it's needed. But you don't have to. You can embrace your introversion and just use it to your advantage and be your true self, I think.
All right. So, and talking about being your true self and doing your best at shining, Susana, how have you been able to build your support system as the entrepreneur that you are, which, by the way, has been a very great journey?
I think that I'm a firm believer in that there are helpers everywhere, right? Taking a little bit from my childhood, there are always people that are here that are trying to help us. There are resources. And I think that, you know, if you get into the mindset that, you know, the universe is trying to help you and push you forward, and that you want to find alliances with those that are also doing incredible things, right? You want to spark up conversations. I'm also not an introvert. I'm very much an extrovert, and you have to shoot your shot, right? I'm all about cold calling and trying to meet up with people and get FaceTime, and you start creating sort of your tribe of support. But in turn, you also, like any community, like any relationship, you have to give back to it. You have to support people and promote people. It's not an easy road, but you cannot do it alone. And having both been in the support role of supporting many CEOs, all men, and making them tons of money during my career, right? I think that many of us have done that, right? And making men and making them very, very successful and allowing them to run their enterprises. What's important is that never to forget that resourcefulness that is innate to us culturally, and looking for the helpers and looking for the people that people don't pay attention to. One thing that I was always really great at and that I still believe in, making friends with the admin, making friends with the assistant, those are the folks that give you the inside information that no one cares to pay attention to. The interns, the mid-level managers, that a lot of times they're the real ones that know when the decision makers are in the moods that they're in, the things that they like. And so they help you push the needle forward. They'll get you on someone's calendar and not be afraid to say, hey, I don't know how to do this. You're a pro in this. You've been doing this for 20 years. Would you mind helping me? I think that oftentimes we're our worst enemy and we tell ourselves no before even asking the question. And I find that people are way more willing to help and to at least answer a question or forward an email or make an introduction if they show that there's a willing and interested person on the other side of the conversation.
That is actually very, very good. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's true, we have helpers everywhere, and then we have allies all over the place, and we have to give back that kind of a support. So I want to go back onto Rocio. And Rocio, who, through your journey, how have you been able to break through and build relationships, especially with the male-dominated industry, and how those allies have helped you?
Yeah, so it is true. I work in tech. My career has been mainly in tech. Now I'm I started Latinas in tech, but many times I've been in a meeting room full of men, engineers and product managers. And I think that in my former company, we were probably 20% females, and we were mostly at the business side. I was in intersection. I was director of product marketing, so I had to sit down with the product team a lot, and they were all males. And first of all, I did notice there are some, stereotypes of, oh, you're Latina. And when I would get into not an argument, but you're discussing something, another woman and another woman, and all the men are like, ooh, cat fight. All those things are wrong for them, but that shouldn't stop me, right? I do rely on other men to stand up and put a stop on that, because again, on a journey to shining. And I don't have time for those things. So this is where I talk about internalizing. That happened, comes in one ear, gets out in the other. They are the ones with the problem. I need to do a pristine job. So people got it. Like that attitude, people at the very beginning, they noticed that was absolute BS. And we need to focus on what matters, work. And then is when people start looking at us, not as you're a female, you're a Latina, you're doing this work well. And that is how you not only, you can pursue better jobs, climb the corporate ladder, be taken seriously, right? And also if there's only men around, they are going to be your allies. They are going to be your mentors. They are going to be the people that will help you grow. So besides feeling so lonely, so sad, get them as allies. That is the most important thing.
We're talking about mentors and allies and all of these people that are surrounding you, and at the same time, Latinas and the stereotypes. Karen, so what kind of relationships had been fundamental for you to climb on the corporate ladder?
So I would say that it's really important to look in all directions. So I think there's sometimes this tendency to think, oh, if I want the next job or to continue to rise in the company, I've got to get close with the people above me and the people above them. And there is some element to that, right? You need to get your brand out there and to share your voice and your vision so that people can understand what you bring to the company. So very, very important. But I find that building the relationships with either people that are your peers, so have similar roles in other parts of the organization that you're interacting with closely, that you're coming together and having just really good open dialogue, sometimes uncovers areas that you can work together to solve problems. So proactively develop solutions or uncover an opportunity. And I think that that's something that gets very, very recognized and very rewarded by organizations. I think another really important component is knowing the people that are part of your team, no matter where they sit in the organization, from the most junior levels. And in fact, I have learned so much from young people that come in, that are new to the industry, that came from a different industry, that have kind of an entry-level role, and they're asking things like, why do we do it this way? I have a better way. I have a different approach to it. So I think I would say it's that ability to think of yourself almost like this diagram, and look above, to the side, below, in all the different directions, and make sure that you know what's going on with all those folks, that you have trusted allies, that you have people that will answer your questions openly and honestly. And then the other part that I think is really, really crucial as you advance in an organization is having a very strong mentor or two, maybe one at your company and then one outside of your company. And for me, a good mentor is somebody that really knows you, connects with you heart to heart, mind to mind, and who's going to give you the tough feedback that you need to hear. You know, like, hey, that last time you were in that meeting, you didn't really nail it, and this is why. And here's some things you can do to improve. Like, that is, I think, completely invaluable, especially if it's someone who is at those higher ranks and can help you, again, develop and understand yourself and have that introspection and develop that roadmap and game plan to continue to advance.
So Karen, just in like, you know, in that kind of a sense, like, you know, like talking about the strong mentors and how they know you and the heart-to-heart conversations with them and the tough feedback. Mm-hmm. How those connections have helped you increase your resiliency?
So I think it's that when you put yourself out there and say, I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, right? I want it all. And that's what I'm expecting out of our relationship. Then you get yourself ready. You have a little bit of armor on to say, I've asked for this, and this is important for me because it's only going to contribute to my getting better. So sometimes things don't go the way you want it to, right? You lose a big client opportunity. You can't get an initiative through. You can't get the funding for something. And so all of that just continues to make you tougher and tougher and more willing to deal with hardships and to say, you know what, I'll go at it again in another month. So I think it's that collection, that mosaic of experiences and of people that are in your corner telling you get back in there, that I think helps with all that.
All right. So in talking about, like, you know, those collection of experiences and relationships. So Susana, what relationships or people have shaped who you are today?
I think that's a really incredible question, only because oftentimes we get, and, you know, I find that right now we're in the mindset of, you know, women empowerment. We're on a conference for, you know, the progress of women in business, Latinas in business, but oftentimes some of my loudest champions have been men. And I think that working in for over 15 years in a male-dominated industry, which is wine and spirits and hospitality, it's been a journey. And I think that if you are able to find those mentors, those coaches, the people that believe in your ability, that are able to push you forward, there's nothing more powerful than the people that are speaking about you when you're not in the room, that they're speaking about your ability, the things that you bring to the table, your successes, and giving you honest feedback, like Karen said, you know, when people are not around. But I do want to say here, for anybody who wants to be spoken about, who wants to have a mentor, who wants to build community and allies and support, you also have to show up and be your own support and be your own ally, right? No one is going to come and say, you know what, Susana, you have been working so hard. Here is your bonus because you've done such an incredible, we're going to double your bonus. You know, that's never happened to me. Maybe it's happened to some of you lucky ladies. It's never happened to me. Every single time I have had to come and be my own ally, be my own support system, right? Be my own resource. And so I want to also encourage, you know, just because people are maybe giving you a pat on the back, giving you resources, putting you in the right conversations, you still have to show up and do the work. You still have to be prepared when that door is finally open. And so I think that's that, sometimes that's that piece that where if we're taught that we work really hard and we do really incredible work and we never talk about it or brag about ourselves, somebody is just going, the spotlight is going to magically come and we're going to get that promotion. It's not going to happen. And if any of us are interested as entrepreneurs, right, there's no money that's coming in if you are not constantly selling yourself. And so I think that the important thing is that when the door finally is open for you and you walk through it, you have the goods, you have the experience, you have the know-how, you know how to deliver, but you still have to do that work. And so I want to just make sure that I say that because it's part allyship, it's part community, it's part tribe, but you are also the one that is pushing that needle forward. You have to be your own advocate every single time, always, every day. I don't know if that answered the question.
Of course it did. So and when we are talking about advocating for ourselves, so we are also talking about our community. So like I would ask Karen, right? What are the biggest challenges we face as a community that stop us from working together? What do you think are those challenges?
I think it's some of the things we've talked about before, like just not wanting to rock the boat too much or making ourselves heard and understood. And then I think, I feel like this is changing a lot now, but in the past, like, I mean, I've been in this business a really long time. It's like, I don't think we were looking for each other before, where now we are. And I feel like that makes such a difference. And the conversations we're having with one another, like I sponsor Comunidad, which is our employee resource group at my company. And we're having these conversations, which are around, do you know what you want to do next? Do you have a plan? Do you know who to talk to learn and to grow and to get that thing you want next? And I think the fact that we're creating space to do this and that we're pushing and pulling each other up, I think is incredibly powerful.
That is good. So like, Susana, the same question for you. What are the biggest challenges we face as a community that stop us from working together?
Maybe we don't talk about it enough. And I think that we talk a lot about unity, but there are lots of cultural differences amongst us, right? I think that and to recognize and make it okay to say that we're not a monolith. Latinos are not a monolith. The experience of somebody from the Caribbean versus from South America versus, you know what I mean? We're not the same. We have different experiences, but I think that if we're able to accept our differences amongst us, I think that there could still be a sense of community. I don't think that we give enough validation to, I mean, there's a huge difference of an experience of someone that came here as a teenager and that speaks with a little bit of an accent versus someone who was born here and has no accent. And those things, I think that those are valid. Those are valid differences amongst us that we don't talk enough about. So I think that if we start, it's also that we have to focus on values. And I think that that's something that I think is really important. Just because, say, for instance, my father's Colombian and, Karen's family is Colombian, that's not enough to just say, well, you guys are going to work really well together. I mean, yeah, I think that we still have to have some sort of shared work ethic and values and shared goals. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like all of a sudden it becomes scandal, like las Latinas are not getting along, right? but that's okay also. Conflict is going to happen and pushback is going to happen and difference of thought is going to happen. And I think that if we push ourselves to be a little bit more accepting of our differences, we can then therefore become way more united. I think that kind of brushing us all, and we do it to ourselves, brushing ourselves with the same kind of brush isn't fair to us, and we shouldn't allow for the Anglo world to do it to us either. But we need to start with ourselves.
Like, we've been talking about resiliency and all of that, and you just started talking about, like, we don't think enough about validating others. So, like, Rocio, what do you think we can do to validate others while, like, when they come to this country, or like just as from any other place, right? Or to other places that are changing cultures and things like that.
Yeah, I think that validation is really important. As Susana was mentioning, we're all so different. And there's many people that come with their own insecurities, especially when they come from another country, when they have an accent, when they didn't go to college in this country, they come underestimating themselves and internalizing those things. And that creates huge imposter syndrome. So when others surrounding these people validate what they're doing and help them trust themselves. And well, of course, you're the first advocate, right? As you were saying, Susana, like you have to advocate for yourself. You have to believe in your own power first, but also the community should play an active role at reminding you that you're there for a reason. And like if you have an accent, for example, it's just a statement that you speak more than one languages. And many times people, far from validating those things, they are contributing to those fears, like, oh, you need to improve your English, your accent is so strong, things like that just pushes people down. So it is very important that both allies and our own community helps us with those validations so that they can be catalysts of our growth.
Right, so I'm going to ask this question to the three of you ladies. So what advice would you give to someone who is looking to get more involved in their community? So why don't we start with you, Susana, then we'll go with Karen, and then Rocio.
That's such a big question. And so I'm going to try to tackle it. And obviously I'm up first. But I mean, Latinos, we are everywhere. It is hard to miss us, right? I mean, I'm sure there are, pretty big pockets, I guess, in the United States where there isn't a big Latino community. But I think that, looking up your local chapter of community, community organizations, wanting to find any sort of cultural event. We have the internet, which my parents did not have, and I honestly didn't have as a little kid. And so I think that I'm a firm believer that if you set out the intent, the community will come. And then you have to kind of start peeling back the layers and say, well, now do I have a shared values with these people? Do I share same vision with these folks? And I also want to say something about a lot of times, especially as first generation kids, for those of us on the Zoom, we get a lot of pressure to have to pull our community up. It's like our responsibility. We're not allowed to make too much more money than everyone else because ¿qué dirán, right? We're not allowed to, I don't know, relish in our success a little bit much more because, there are so many people back home that are struggling. And I think that we also have to take a moment to say, and it's hard, it's a hard conversation, pero entre nos, I will say that not everyone is gonna come with us. Not everyone is gonna come with you. You know, not everyone from your family, from your friends, from the people that you grew up with, from your company, right? Not everyone is gonna be able to take the path with you. It's hard to accept that. That's a hard pill. I also want all of the Latinos in the United States to take over and for us to be, you know, united and for us to start running things. That's my dream. It's probably not going to happen. And so you pay attention to the people that want to take that journey with you. You pay attention to the people that are on the same path as you. And I think that that's really like the essence of our community. For those folks that want to learn and listen and grow and are open to expanding their mind, their career, their money, right? Because we can't be scared of that. And not feel guilty about that. I think that that's incredibly important.
Thank you. Karen?
So I would say for anyone that wants to be more involved in the community is join ALPFA and take full advantage of the amazing content, the events, all of the venues and the ways that we are coming together. I have made incredible friends here. I've got great connections that I've met through ALPFA, people that I call when I want to celebrate, people that I call when I need to be picked up off the floor. And again, that network helps with your resilience and it helps you feel good and proud of where you're going. And to Susana's point, I mean, the people that are members of ALPFA, we share a lot of similar values, which include, we want to make sure we're reflecting very strongly and positively on our culture, but we're also very dedicated to improving ourselves and being our best selves on a daily basis and to helping each other out. So for me, ALPFA is the most natural way to make that happen and to really connect with the community.
And lastly, Rocio.
Karen is spot on. Joining an organization like ALPFA, finding your familia and your comunidad is so important, especially for people that are expats, where we don't have that many family here. Now, you can also join internal at your company, like affinity groups, like the ERG groups. That is not only your other familia, your other community inside your organization, but it's also a way for the company to listen to what problematics are affecting our community. And finally, we can bring it to a smaller self, just yourself. It's all about me getting a mentor, but what about me being the mentor? Doesn't matter where you are in the organization, but you can always take someone. Always. Like if you don't have one right now, offer that friendly hand to somebody else, a newcomer, somebody more junior, somebody that reports to you, somebody that reports to somebody else. Make it a Latina, even better, or a Latino, right? Help the base be lifted as you get lifted yourself. We believe that for every one mentor that we surface, 5 Latinos can be lifted. So I do think that is an important part of creating a community.
So before we actually go into the very last question, I got a question back from my chat at work. So it says like this: this panel is about share your expertise and insight in entrepreneurship, technology, and finance. Can you leverage relationships and embrace change to build relationships and community? Who would like to answer that?
Janet, would you mind repeating the question one more
Sure.
time? I'm sorry.
It's this panel is about sharing your expertise and insight about entrepreneurship, technology, and finance. How can you leverage those relationships and embrace change while building those relationships and community?
That is a very loaded question.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's defragment it a little bit. I think that in this panel, we've been talking a lot about resilience, flexibility, and community. And I think we have everything that it's needed. And very important, it's not a stereotype. We're Latinas, right? Our parents fought so hard for a better life. And that's embedded in our blood. We are resilient by nature, you know? And we really, like, I hope that everybody can, agregarle dos barritas, like increase their confidence a little, get out of their comfort zone, lose the fear of failing, and just go for it. And as Susana was saying, do not be shy about being your own advocate. Nobody's gonna come and volunteer. Oh, you're so amazing, because we try to 200% of the work, hoping that one day somebody's gonna come. Oh, I mean, Hita, you're so good, I'm gonna promote you. That's not gonna happen.
No.
So we gotta, take the bull by the horns and go ask and be our first brand ambassadors. So that is probably the message I want to leave out there as a last answer.
All right. And
I'll
then,
add,
go ahead, Susana.
I'll add just that there's a lot of emphasis in corporate America and corporate spaces about leveraging relationships. But I want to turn the question around to us and saying, how are you contributing to your community? How are you contributing to your relationships? Are you writing recommendations? Are you talking about people in a room when they're not around? Are you serving as a mentor? Like my co-panelist said, right? Are you giving time, taking coffee meetings, assisting people and talking well about them in a room, putting them up for a project? And so, because the idea of community is that everyone, it's an ecosystem, right? Una mano lava la otra. And so if there isn't that process and we're here just to leverage and take all the time, which a lot of times, popular culture will teach you to do, there's no ecosystem. You're now taking from the well of something that you're also not giving back to. So yes, you can always leverage your relationships and make sure that you're making good on things and being a follow-up master, which I think is so important. But also, how are you giving back? How are you supporting? How are you giving time and energy and resources and your knowledge as well? And so I think that always comes back to you.
It's a question on the chat, and it says, if you could change something that your mom did regarding your Latino culture and values, what would that be? Who would like to answer that one? I mean, it's just like, if you could change something that your mom and dad did regarding your Latino culture and values, what would that be?
I'd like to jump in here and say that there is no value on rest. There is no, it's like if you rest for a day or celebrate a win or take yourself on a vacation after your promotion, after the great job that you did, take yourself to a nice dinner, take yourself on a really just disgustingly expensive trip, right? I think that there isn't any value in that especially for immigrant parents. It's like work. They are the reason why so many of us have reached burnout, like Valeria spoke about earlier. And so that's a very big cultural shift, that we also need rest. We are living, working beings, and we need downtime. You just can't go at 100% all the time. No one does it. And so if anything, if I learned anything about being in luxury spaces, is that people summer as a verb. People relax and they enjoy and they toast to themselves and they take themselves on really great dinners because they just want to, and they order that really incredible glass of wine because they deserve it. And I think that celebrating ourselves is something that many of our Latino parents didn't do because it was anti all the things. I don't know if colonialism and religion and culture attributed to those things, but
because at the moment,
yeah,
right, because probably at the time was just like it's going to shift our visions to somewhere else, and then it's not going to let us go on. All right, so there is another one question in the chat, and it says, you are all great leaders. What do you recommend as leaders should do or could do to open the doors for other Latinas on the rise?
Yeah, I think it's some of the things we've talked about, which is serve as an example for others, be open as people approach, like if you see someone that you admire, whose job you're interested in, that you want to learn from, to be bold and ask. I think a lot of people hold themselves back sometimes by saying, oh, they must be so busy, or they don't have time for me. The truth of the matter is that most people love sharing their experience. They love helping other people out, and they will embrace it. I have always found that when I reached out to someone and said, I really respect and admire you, I'd like to spend some time with you, like, who would say no to that? And if there is someone that says no to that, then you read them wrong, right? And it's probably better to stay away from someone like that. So I think it's just putting yourself out there, having open conversations, and developing your very own roadmap of what you want out of your career. And it's not going to go perfectly according to that roadmap, but you have to have a vision for where you want to go.
Thank you so much, Karen. So there is another question, and it is like, Rocio, you talk about mentorships. However, it is something that as Latinas, sometimes we do not use, or we don't know how. Do you have mentors, and what do you recommend on how we can have them in our lives?
So there, as Karen was saying, it is important to have one at work and one outside work. And I think she was super spot on what are the qualities that you should be looking at. You want somebody that is not shy at telling you where you can improve. A lot of people, and I've seen this so much, that I've seen like women that are senior engineers or senior businesswomen, they don't know how to approach a mentor. It doesn't matter where you're in the organization, you could be at the very top and still need a mentor, right? You gotta walk that path. Remember, asking somebody to be your mentor is you're tampering with their ego. So if it was you and somebody comes and said, I admire where you are, and I would love to learn from you, that is just, food for the ego. So very rarely anybody's going to say no. Now you have to be, I recommend you to be very precise and very precise. Like do a self-reflection of where you want to go. What do you want to get out of your growth? Like maybe you want to go into operations. Well, find somebody that has experience in there that can recommend you things to get there. Remember, being a mentor is not one meeting, it's a relationship that should last, and build that relationship so that that person is invested in your success. The difference between a mentor and a sponsor is that a mentorship is a selfless act. They are not going to win any points by having you grow. A sponsor is a win-win situation. They open the doors for you, but you have to excel so that they shine too, right? But a mentor, it's a selfless thing that really goes a long way. So definitely, like, take that seriously. If you don't have one, or if you're not one, you have homework to do.
That's a great advice. Thank you so much. And one last question, and I'm going to probably ask you to answer it in about a minute or so from each one of you. So what advice can you share with our audience to develop and demonstrate resiliency, and for them to build that resiliency beside all we have talked about mentorship, we have talked about our own values of advocating ourselves to somebody else, right? And reflecting strongly our culture. Is there anything else that we are missing, guys, that you think that we should bring up to the audience?
I can start.
Answer.
Sorry. So one thing I would say is when there's a lot of change or turmoil or people are faced with the unexpected, it seems like the first place we go is to a bad place, a negative place, a dark place. And I think what I discovered from some of my difficult times is that if we shift our minds a little bit and instead think, what are all the great things that can happen as a result of this? And I've seen it where there's been corporate changes or layoffs, or a company gets bought by another company, and sometimes people's reaction is very negative, and then they try to take everybody down with them into that negative vortex. And I think that those of us that can say, no, hold on, stop. I don't know what I don't know. Instead, I'm going to be a bulwark of strength. I'm going to share that strength with others. I'm going to keep people focused on the positive. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to be a leader and guide others through this. I think that that's an incredible strength to be able to bring, is to turn something that feels negative into something very positive and promising.
Susana?
I'll say building up resiliency is something that it's like a muscle, right? And I think that it takes also being very, very honest with yourself as a professional, as a worker, as a woman in the world, as a businesswoman. I think that there's nothing more important than having those hardcore conversations with yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror and say, what do I suck at, right? Because we all suck at something. I've worked with incredibly successful entrepreneurs in my life, and they all suck at something because inevitably they have hired me, right, to fill in the gaps. So, and it's okay. But once you have those honest conversations with yourself, there's literally no one that can tell you anything about yourself because you've already had that. So if you are an unorganized person, say for instance, but incredibly dynamic and you're really great on your feet and you're super creative, maybe, I don't know, a project management role isn't the right fit for you. And so when people say, you know, superiors or bosses or, you know, other hiring people say, you're not that great at project management, it's not, you have a thick skin already because you know this about yourself. You've done the work. You've done all of the things and had those honest, hard conversations with yourself and say, I know where my blind spots are. I know where my weaknesses are. And I also really, really know my strengths. And you're able to play on those, strengthen those. I think too often, and I think this might be very similar to what Karen was saying, we pay so much attention to our deficit. We pay so much attention to our blind spots and our weaknesses and what we suck at, and we overstudy for it. We over prepare for it, as opposed to strengthening what we're really, really good at. And that makes you be resilient by default almost, because you're not signing up for the projects, the jobs, the positions, you know, whatever, the presentations that will highlight your weaknesses. You don't want to put yourself in a position of weakness, right? You say, I'm not really that strong at that, but you know what? My girlfriend, Rocio, she's incredible at this. And that not only are, you know, now you're tapping into your resiliency, but now you're also creating community because you're offering and opening up and highlighting someone else's strengths. So I think that being honest with yourself is always going to be the first step for me.
And Rocio, you're last. And then
really quickly, I know that we're running out of time a little bit.
Yeah.
So I would just say, let your terca Latina flow a little bit. Being a little stubborn. Like, it is important to understand that sometimes things won't go your way, but settling for a no first, like really quickly, might not be the best approach. Like, we can find ways to lead into a yes. I think that about 80% of the no's have another way around, and you can make things work your way. So just, you know, try hard. Even when the answer is no, there's always, as you say, Karen, a positive outcome out of almost every situation. There's a quote that a former manager of me said, never let a crisis go to waste. Even a crisis, even a bad situation can lead you to clarity of mind and pivot to the right position. So my advice here is, don't be negative and try to get your way done, as long as you trust your way.
Wonderful conversation with you ladies today, great takeaways, like, like self-awareness, self-care, surround ourselves with positive relationships. We are resilient by nature. We have to be fearless, and we have to ask for feedback and be honest with ourselves. Really, really, really appreciate this. And lastly, let's just our Turkey Latinas flow. Thank you so much for tonight. It was wonderful talking to you, ladies.
Thank
you
you
so much. Great being here.